Hello and welcome to Goals preview of Monday night's big clash between Manchester United and Tottenham at Old Trafford. I'm joined by Manchester United correspondent Kris Voakes and the chief correspondent Peter Staunton. Thank you for joining me. Now, the first place and only place to start really is Jose Mourinho. What kind of start has he had to the season? How is he going to be feeling right now?
He's under a lot of pressure, but then I think he's brought most of that on himself, partly because he's Jose Mourinho and this is the way things work. And partly because of the way that he's handled the situation over the summer. And it just seems like he's got so many enemies at the moment, both above him and within the team, and in the stands as well, that he's backed himself into a bit of a corner, and it's going to be hard to see him now fight his way out of it and actually make a good season out of it.
Absolutely. And you look at his previous clubs when things have sort of started to melt down in the third season. He usually had a title by that stage at the clubs, whether that was Real Madrid or whether that was at Chelsea the first time round. You know, he kind of had that goodwill built up with the fans, maybe that, you know, they're on the routes of success. But aside from the Europa League and the League Cup, which I don't think people are really too fussed about at Old Trafford, he doesn't really have that. And I think he's kind of forced himself into this situation, complaining about everything, not happy with the first team players, not happy with the youth team players, not happy with Ed Woodward, not happy with Paul Pogba, his star player. That, you know, I think it's only going to end one way.
But why do you think he has brought this on himself? Because he can't be enjoying it either.
No, not at all. But then at the same time, he seemed to have an end goal about a lot of what he was saying over the summer. He wanted the extra players. He doesn't believe that this Manchester United squad is ready to win a title. Of all the kind of players in the big drama over the summer, Mourinho was the one who thought, we're not good enough at the moment, we need to get better. That isn't seemingly something that's shared at boardroom level, who have said, you've got enough defenders to be going along with, and we don't think that Alderweireld or Harry Maguire are as good as what we've got. So of all of these people, it's Mourinho who said, we need to improve beyond what we've already got.
Yeah, I hate to bring Pep Guardiola into every conversation with Jose Mourinho, but you look at Guardiola got criticised last summer because he bought 3 fullbacks for 150 million odd. But he knew that was the sort of the alterations that squad needed to get to the next level. And what did they do? They go and win the league. Did he go and look for 3 more central defenders or 3 more defenders this summer to improve what he already had? No. He couldn't get a defensive midfielder to cover for Fernandinho. What did he do? He just said, well, maybe I'll play John Stones there. You know, because at clubs like Manchester City under Guardiola, at clubs like Tottenham under Maurizio Pochettino, the recruitment is one element of it, and then the coaching is another part of it. So once the players are all assembled together, it then becomes the manager's responsibility to make them better. Now, I don't think there's a single player that was at the club before Jose Mourinho got there. No, there is one. Jesse Lingard is about the only one that I think is a better player now than he was when Jose Mourinho got there. And the players that have come in, the ones that Mourinho has bought, for example, Eric Bailly, Mkhitaryan is gone already. You're looking at Victor Lindelof, Lukaku, all those guys. He hasn't brought those guys to the next level either. So what makes him think that the next wave of recruits that come into the club are all of a sudden going to be the ones that click for him? He's been enabled in the transfer window so far by Man United, 400 odd million. And he expects that every time that a problem needs to be addressed in the team, he's just going to get another 50, 60, 70 million to address it.
That's Mourinho. That's who they knew they were getting. This situation that they found Mourinho in this summer has been 2 years in the making, because they took Mourinho on 2 years ago knowing exactly this is what happens at Mourinho clubs. He'll want to keep spending, he'll want to keep improving them rather than worry about the coaching on the training ground.
You look at the top Premier League teams at the moment when they're attacking. You know, I don't rate Arsenal at the moment. I don't think they're playing particularly well. But look at Iwobi's goal that he scored the other day. They went back to front. They kept the ball for a full minute and found a really good goal. You look at the sort of choreographed goals that Chelsea have scored already this season under Sarri. What Liverpool do on the counter attack with their players. You just don't see that same sort of fluency and cohesion in attacks that for Man United. And I think that Mourinho has to take a lot of blame for that. He can't just put 11 players on the field and expect them to find solutions. They need to be coached, they need to be told what to do.
So is that the main thing afflicting them on the pitch then, do you think, that style of play?
A little bit, but I also think even what Mourinho's trying to do in terms of a style of play isn't quite happening so far this season. Mm-hmm. The most kind of organised and trained I think I've seen them look has been midway through the first half against Leicester, when they had 2 banks of 4 behind the ball, when Leicester were trying to get back and get the equaliser after the early goal. Other than that, they've been all over the place.
And if somebody asked you in that Leicester game who the better team was, On the ball, you would say it was Leicester, and that was where Mourinho wanted to be, was drawing an opposition team onto him, and then he could try and hit through the break through his pacier players like Alexis Sanchez. Now, that can fly, at sort of a mid-table club, but it doesn't fly at Man United. You have to get on the ball, you have to be aggressive, and you have to make sure that you're the one pinning your opponent's back. You can't play like an underdog when you're playing at Man U, particularly after spending 400, close to £500 million at this stage.
Also, he's not even getting that right at the moment, or the players aren't getting that right, because at Brighton, they just fell apart at the seams, and that's not a Mourinho style of play normally. Normally, they at least get that right, and then they worry about the attacking later. They're worrying about everything at the minute.
So do you think the players have to take some sort of responsibility as well? Because people seem to be pointing the finger of blame at Mourinho, which is fair enough, because it's easy to do that.
Definitely. Some of those Man United players right now, if they're honest enough with themselves and you ask them, are you hitting your marks? They would have to tell you no.
Yeah.
They would have to tell you no. I think, Pogba had a really good summer, really good World Cup, but is he playing as well as he should be for a player of £100 million? Probably not. Marcus Rashford, what's happened to him? He's really lost his way. Juan Mata likes to get in the ball, play through balls. He's not really been on the level either. Alexis Sanchez, since he joined in January, we're waiting for him to have one good game. And I know that, it comes down to what they're told to do by the coach, but I do think that some of them could increase sort of their 5, 6, 7 out of 10 performances up to sort of 8, 9, 10 out of 10 performances. We just don't see that. And maybe they're happy to sit back now, like Chelsea players did when Mourinho left the second time round, and let Mourinho face the music. Because for as long as they're not pushing in the performances, then it means the manager is going to get the blame. They're always going to be protected from it.
Yeah, but surely there is still a sense of you're playing for your club, you're playing for yourself as well.
Yeah, to an extent. Players like Juan Mata, Jesse Lingard, Ander Herrera, these are players that you can tell just every time you speak to them, they love the club and they love playing for Manchester United and everything that it represents, and they love the fact that they're representing these fans who absolutely idolise them. They know the bomb's going to go off at some point. They just know it's not going to go off in their direction. They're standing well back and letting Mourinho take the brunt of it. And that happened at Chelsea, and it feels a bit like that's developing now at Manchester United.
And back to the transfer window as well. How do you think that's affected the squad so far this season?
I think he wasn't happy with it. He wasn't happy with the transfer window. So that means that he went in to the new season sulking. He went in sulking about the fact that he didn't get one more senior centre-back who could carry them through sort of the next 18 months to 2 years. He went in sulking about the fact that all his best players were in the semi-finals of the World Cup and he couldn't get them back training at the right time. He didn't have a squad that he wanted to work with. And that they didn't start off on there wasn't bright, cheerful football. There wasn't a bright, cheerful atmosphere around Man United when the season started. And I think that all comes back to the club's failures in the transfer window.
Yeah, his first press conference in LA in the summer, he said this pre-season is going to be very bad. And he was moaning from the start. He was saying, this isn't my squad. I've got too many youngsters that I didn't want here who aren't going to be a part of my squad when it comes to August the 9th. And he was saying about wanting 2 more players in the transfer window. He's basically told all of his young players that they're not good enough. And by saying that he wanted more recruits in the transfer market, he's told a lot of his first team players that you're not good enough.
And that negativity, it's just going to, it's not great, is it? And one person who that has impacted is Pogba. And it's sort of public knowledge that it's a bit of a rocky road between them, isn't it?
Yeah, we've had his agent in the last couple of days coming out as well and firing a few barbs. So that's normal for Mino Raiola. But yeah, Pogba, for him to have had such a good World Cup, come back in your first game, play as well as he did against Leicester in both boxes, because he was excellent in defence as well. From, as you said earlier, Leicester were putting them under a lot of pressure, and Pogba was crucial at times in defence. For him then to come out afterwards and say what he said about, I'm not going to say what I want to say or else I get fined, that speaks to problems deep down, big problems, because he should be firing, he should be on top of his game, he should be as happy as he's ever been. Clearly he's not happy. Mourinho said after Brighton on Sunday that a lot of his players aren't happy, and you can tell that when their happiness isn't there, their confidence isn't there, and it's certainly not in your big multi-million-pound midfielder. You've got big problems.
So what do you think then? What's going to happen? Do one of them have to go at some point?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's probably one for Ed Woodward to answer. And if you're to look at the situation and see who's got more longevity at Man United, who's going to be a longer term asset, you would have to say it's going to be Pogba. Now, what that says about player power, that you're going to put all your eggs into the basket of the player rather than back in the manager, you're undermining his authority. Well, that's the modern game. That's where we are right now. But there's no way that Jose Mourinho should be allowed to alienate Paul Pogba to such an extent that Pogba wants to leave the club, because Pogba is too expensive for a start, but he's also too valuable to Man United. Not only on the pitch, but we know it. You know, he's their flagship player. He represents Man United right now the same way that the likes of David Beckham did back when Alex Ferguson was the manager. You know, you can't afford to sideline him over a petty feud. And I made this point in the piece I wrote the other week. It's okay sidelining the likes of Luke Shaw and insulting him and making sure you know that you think little of him. Same thing with Anthony Martial. It's another thing altogether when you get a World Cup winner like Pogba in there with an agent as powerful as Mino Raiola, who offered him to Man City last January.
Yeah, we had this 15 years ago at United with David Beckham, as you say, and Ferguson was the one who stayed. We had it 13 years ago with Roy Keane, and Ferguson was the one who stayed. The club always backed the manager. They can't back the manager in this situation because Pogba is just the kind of the lightning rod. He's not the only one. There's a big problem within the squad below him as well.
Yeah, there needs to be something that's going to happen. But right now, you know, the start of the season, we look at it where it is. It's not been great for them. What are we thinking looking ahead to the season for them?
Well, if we want to start with the Spurs game on Monday night, I know there's already some Spurs fans really worried about the fact that United are playing so poorly, because that only means one thing. It means that Spurs are obviously going to lose. But I think they're playing Spurs at a bad time. One of the, Spurs didn't have a great window either. They didn't get one player in. But if you're going to say one thing about that Spurs squad, it means that there's such a sense of continuity and such a fluency between the players that they can switch between 2 or 3 different systems. It's not like they're trying to bed in 4 or 5 different signings at once. They all know each other really well. They're comfortable with what they're doing. And Pochettino has a great belief in the standard of the squad that's there. They're going to come and they're going to have no fear about playing at Old Trafford. None whatsoever. And United, you're waiting for this performance to say, here we are. You're looking for that 4-5-0 Lukaku hat-trick. It's just, I just don't see it coming around the bend. I don't see that performance coming around the bend.
And the last 3 years in this same fixture, Man United have won 1-0 every time. The first of those was Louis van Gaal's first game in charge of his second season when Memphis Depay had just come in. The second is the most like this fixture, I think, in that United had drawn a lot of games at home during that autumn, and then Spurs came to Old Trafford and United beating them 1-0. Henry Mkhitaryan put in his best performance to that point as a Man United player, and it felt like a kind of monkey off the back a little bit for United. They need that kind of result even if they don't get the performance on Monday. I think performances are still going to be under the spotlight, and they're going to continue to be unless United suddenly find themselves at the top of the league. But more than anything right now, Mourinho just needs a result under his belt. He really does.
And the other big problem is that you look at the standard of teams that are probably going to finish ahead of United in the table. Let's look at Liverpool, Spurs and Man City. They're going to gobble up so many 3 points at a time that if United don't start, obviously they beat Leicester on the opening game of the season. Did they deserve it? That's another thing. But if they don't get 3 points every week for the first part of the season, they're going to find themselves so far behind by the time December and January roll around.
And lacking in confidence.
That's it. They're going to already be out of contention because Liverpool have gone off like a rocket, 2 wins. Man City gone off like a rocket as well. Spurs have 2. And there's still teams above United in the table who have that early season bounce. You're looking at teams like Watford and Bournemouth and these kind of sides. They could really upset the apple cart when it comes to United when they come up against them. And, like I say, they're really going to have to get a marker down and start getting these 3 points and performing like a team that expects to finish in first place or at least in the top 3.
Like Mourinho said recently how people have a good way of speaking about a team that finished second, i.e. Manchester United, as though they got relegated.
Einsteins, he calls us.
Geniuses, Einsteins. A team who finished second, the press makes out that they could have been relegated, and the team that finishes below them, it's as though they're serial winners. Obviously talking about the likes of Liverpool and Spurs. But I just don't see Man United finishing above Liverpool and Spurs this season, the way things are going. And I think Monday night, there's a chance that Monday night is really going to highlight that.
Well, you mentioned Spurs and the fact that they haven't added any players in the window. How do you think they're doing considering that?
I think they're doing well. I think the one problem that they need to watch out for is the guys that had a busy summer. So you're looking at Trippier, you're looking at Dele Alli, Eric Dyer, Harry Kane, those guys who played really well for England over the course of the summer. You don't want to burn them out you don't want to burn them out too quickly. Kane came back. I know he got his goal against Fulham on Saturday, but he hasn't looked sharp. He hasn't looked sharp probably since the group stage of the World Cup. So he's going to need the pressure alleviated from him at some stage. Trippier looks fine. He's been brilliant to start the season, probably the best right back in the league at the moment. But like I say, I think they've got more advantages than disadvantages over having a tight squad. They made a couple of additions. Well, they made Lucas Moura that addition in January. They've got Eric Lamela back playing well also. So I think Spurs will be fine. I like their squad.
And I think kind of putting a United angle on it as well with Spurs, the one question mark over them really was Toby Alderweireld's influence in that squad, because he wasn't playing so much last year. He wasn't very happy. Obviously, that's what helped to lead Manchester United down that route. He played on Saturday, played well, and everything looked fine. That's only 90 minutes, but if he can put in a big performance, particularly against Manchester United, given everything that's happened, then that's a good sign for Spurs as well.
So, can I ask, score predictions?
I'm going to go for Spurs. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better for Man United. I think that Spurs, like Chris says, after losing their last few visits at Old Trafford, I think they want to put a marker down. So I'm going to go for Man United 1, Spurs 2.
Oh, Chris? Deep breath there.
Normally from a United perspective, I'd be quite confident that they can still get the job done. I'm not sure after the last couple of weeks. I think they will get a draw at best. I think 1-1 from the positive side of me. I think I might side with Peter when it comes to realism and what's really going on at United.
Not a lot of confidence there at all. Well, thank you very much, Chris and Peter, for joining me, and thank you for your expert opinions. You can follow these guys on Instagram and Twitter. Just have a look at the description below where you can find all the information. Also, don't forget to let us know your thoughts on everything and join in on the discussion. And don't forget to subscribe to all of these videos as well to get the latest football news and analysis direct from goal.